Learning checkpoint 2.2. Number 1 asked you to subtract and simplify the two polynomials. We have some rules that we need to follow when we are subtracting polynomials. Those rules are you can only combine like terms, and you have to be super careful about this subtraction sign in between the parentheses. When we subtract things, that's like adding the opposite or adding a negative. So when I'm subtracting these two polynomials, what I'm actually going to do is change this to a plus sign. I'm going to actually add, but then I'm going to do the opposite of all of the terms that are inside the second set of parentheses. So this negative y squared is going to become positive. The negative 7y is going to become positive. And then the positive 4 that you see is actually going to be a negative 4. So I'm going to rewrite the problem and then we will find our like terms. So we've got y squared minus 3y minus 5. Then we're going to be adding a positive y squared, adding 7y, and then subtracting 4. When we're adding and subtracting polynomials, you can only collect your like terms. So those are going to be the terms that have the same variable with the same exponent. So right here we have y squared plus another y squared. You can go ahead and collect those two terms underlined in orange and add them together. Our next set of like terms is going to be the negative 3y and the positive 7y. So you can add negative 3y and positive 7y together to get your next term. And then our last set of like terms is the constants, negative 5 and negative 4, and you would add those or combine those together to get the last term of your answer. Number 2 asks you to multiply and simplify your answer. When we multiply polynomials together, we multiply numbers with numbers, and then when we have variables, we add their exponents together. So I'm going to come up to the top right here and just kind of do some little side work just as an example. This is not necessarily related to this problem. This is just a skill that you need to remember. So let's just say that I have a to the second power, and I'm going to multiply that times a, I don't know, to the third power. If I expand out what this means, a squared is a times a, and then a to the third power is a times a times a. So you can see I have my 2 a's here and my 3 a's here. And when I multiply them all together, I notice that I have 5 multiplied together. That means that I have an exponent of 2 plus 3, or 5. So when you have variables that are the same, like in my example, I had all a's, you add their exponents together when you are multiplying the terms. We're going to use that skill on this problem number 2. The first thing that I'm going to do is go through and underline to help get you started which pieces can be multiplied together. So I mentioned that you only multiply coefficients with coefficients. So numbers times numbers. I'm going to have 6 times 3. And then let's go through each variable. So I have x to the first power and times x to the second power. So the first power and the second power. And then you're going to come through and do your next variable. I see some y's. Y to the third power times y to the first power. And it will be your job to simplify the rest of this problem. And then our z terms, z to the first power. And then it looks like, oh, I forgot an x. I'll come back and fix that. Hang on. Was not reading carefully. So right here, I see that I have an x squared at the end of this second term. So that x squared can go with the rest of our orange items right here. That's a power of 2. So I'm just going to add another 2 into that term right there in orange. and then you will finish out the rest of the simplifying. Number 3 asks you to simplify this multiplication problem. And we have a monomial on the front of our parentheses, and we are multiplying to everything inside the parentheses. So what we are going to do is come through and distribute and then take it piece by piece. So this negative 3x cubed is going to be multiplying with this. So you'll do negative 3 times negative 2 times x to the 3 plus 2 power. That will be that orange set of multiplication right there, that little orange arrow that I drew. We're going to multiply this negative 3x to the third power times negative 2x to the second power. And when you simplify it, you'll end up with this group of stuff in orange right here. It's going to be your job to finish that simplifying. And then we are going to also distribute to the 4x. So you're going to have plus negative 3 times positive 4 times x to the third power. And then we have an extra x right here, x to the first power is where the plus 1 in my exponent is coming from. And then our very last step is to multiply by this negative 3. So we're going to have negative 3 times negative 3 times x to the third power. So that's everything in the problem multiplied all the way out, and you will just need to simplify each individual colored piece to get your final answer. Number 4 says, what is the coefficient of the second term of the trinomial? So the second term is going to be whatever the middle chunk of stuff is after I multiply through all the way. So this problem is almost worked all the way out for you. You just have to figure out what this big capital B is standing for. So I'm going to take my binomial 4a plus 5, and I'm going to multiply it times itself, since that's what the power of 2 is telling me to do. So when you expand this problem all the way out, you're going to have 4a plus 5 times 4a plus 5. And then we learned something in class called the FOIL method. I'll go ahead and write that out to the side. That means you multiply your first two terms together. That's where the 16a squared is coming from in the answer that you see here. And then we're going to multiply our outside terms together. So that would be 4a times positive 5. Then you will multiply your inside terms together. That will also be 4a times 5. And then your last terms is where the positive 25 is coming from. So I'm going to leave some space. I want you to go fill in the two blanks that you see right there. So you're going to have to go through and multiply the things that we did not multiply yet to get the rest of the answer. You will combine these two terms together to figure out the coefficient of B. This big capital B, you're trying to figure out what number is in that place after you simplify right here. And then the last one, number 5, asks you to simplify. This is a multiplication problem, and we're going to work it out very similar to that last one. We are going to distribute the x to everything that you see in the second set of parentheses. And then you are also going to distribute this minus 4 or negative 4 to everything inside the second set of parentheses. So for example, this first x times x squared will give you x to the power of 3, because x to the power of 1 times x to the power of 2 gives you a total power of 3 on those x's. And you will just go through, do your 3 steps of pink and your 3 steps of blue, combine anything that has the same base with the same exponent to simplify for your final answer.